everyone. Welcome to another episode of Deep In with Christina. I'm your host, Christina Weber. And I want to acknowledge that some of our previous episodes, the sound has been off, especially on my end. This episode, I think we fixed everything. Imari and I are in a closet. We're about to start a conversation. I'm going to introduce you to him in a moment. As I've also shared before, this podcast is not an interview. It's a conversation. So you get to be a fly on the wall as well as a participant, because I always welcome additions to the conversation. Just message me or put a comment and get yourself involved, because that's what this is about, community and building the human connection industry. So I'm back in the closet in the Palisades at the portal with Imari, formerly Imari Anderson, and now known as Imari Tuakli. He was teaching me, making sure I got the name correct before we started. And for all of you should know that Christina should have been hooked on phonics as a child. And so I'm still learning language. So you can judge me. I don't care if you judge me. You're judging me very hard. But hey, you know what? When it's overcoming your fears and not letting that stand in your way and just accepting who you are as an individual. And sometimes I'm just going to fuck up the words. Here you go, fucking up my name. And here we go, fucking up the name. But let's start with, so Imari Tuakli.
I can say my full name if you want. My full name is Imari Adeola Samora Anderson Tuakli.
How do you get all those names?
That's a question for my parents. That's not a question for me. But funny enough, when I finally did long overdue research on my name a couple months ago, I realized that 3 of my names are based on freedom fighter names, which I think is quite ironic given the fact that right now, I guess in some ways you could consider me a freedom fighter, but a freedom fighter less so about like politics and changing countries and more so about giving people their freedom back, like internal freedom. So I very much consider myself a freedom fighter, and I think it's very synchronistic that I'm actually named after a couple of them in my very long name.
How in a time right now, it's so interesting because, I hear that word freedom fighter, and I can completely see in the perspective that you are that you are positioning freedom fighter. And in the current climate of the world, we know we're in COVID, politics are just like, I think that now as a child growing up, I didn't really involve myself. My parents weren't really involved in politics. They weren't talking about it. And now we're at a place that it's really just hard to avoid. And I imagine that your coach, I guess maybe I like the idea of a freedom coach too, freedom fighter, freedom coach. How is it that do you find that you're supporting people and actually how they are navigating politics?
Very good question. And my gut response is no. The conversations that I end up having in my classrooms or in my one-on-one courses, a lot of them, we leave the outside shit outside. Like, oh, did you get vaccinated? Oh, what about abortion? Like, for me, that's kind of the problem that we exist in now, is people are trying to find their identities in these ridiculous conversations rather than finding their identities in who they actually are, right? And I think, if I have a client who's talking to me about, oh, I feel like I'm living in fear and I'm not living in my potential, also let's talk about vaccines. I'm like, no, right? Like, that's a different conversation. I'm here for you. I'm not here for your politics. I'm not here for your performative identity. I'm not here for your tribe mentality. I'm here for Christina Weber. Who is that person outside of her subscriptions to any ideologies? I know me and you talk all the time about topics and contentious issues, and those are all great and those are fun conversations. But the reason I love Christina isn't because she's vax or anti-vax. The reason I love Christina is because of her passion and her drive and her fearlessness when it comes to connecting with whoever. Like, those are the things that make you who you are. And when people come to me, I'm more focused on the things that make you who you are than the things that distract you from who you are.
It's a perfect time for you to be doing what you're doing. When a couple weeks ago, when I arrived in Los Angeles from Maryland, I had journaled about feeling as though I was confused about my identity and belonging. Who do I relate to right now? And that was the environment around politics and the outside world and the chaos was actually causing that inside of me. And it was once I arrived and I just sat in it and I shedded it. I shook it off. I shook off the external stuff. Those feelings didn't exist anymore. It was like, oh, okay, cool. I belong because I know who I am. And I became more secure in that and not seeking validation from the external world for me to be quote unquote accepted.
Right. Okay. Now we're getting into the good shit. This is why I love you, Christina. So, you're telling me that there is an identity that is formed by the tribe, and there's an identity that's formed with the knowing of the self, right? And when you don't know the self, it's very easy to get caught up in the politics and the hoopla and the drama and the back and forth and the fucking bullshit. It's so easy to do that, right? But that's why I do the work that I do, so that people can come from a place of knowing so that they can come back to that in times of discord and distress and blah, 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 right? Because a lot of times people subscribe to these ideologies as binary, red, blue, white, black, whatever. A lot of times they subscribe to that is because that's the closest thing that they know that will give them a sense of self, right? Like, oh my God, I'm lonely, I don't have any friends. And all my people who I want to be friends with say, get vaccinated. So I'm all of a sudden super vax and I'm super like, go do this thing, right? Not because it's necessarily actually what I believe, but because I just need something to believe in because I don't have enough of a sense of self to like rest on. Does that make sense? I think that I love that me and you're starting the conversation this way because I feel like 98% of the work that I do is identity work. The question of who am I and who do I want to become? Those are like the two questions at the core of 98% of my work.
Would you add to that then how to, after those questions, say one more time, who am I?
Who am I and who do I want to become?
Who am I? Who do I want to become? Yeah. How do I fit in? Is that included as well in society? Because if humans' greatest achievement is interdependence and not independence, that is also in community and tribe, which I know you're going to share with us today of the 7 virtues to create a dream-filled life. And one of them is included into community. So how does that then fit in? How do we fit in?
You mean, what is the intersection between independence and interdependence?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I believe the first step is the independence. It is to, once you know the self, then you can therefore know how you fit in the community, right? But if you do it opposite, then you start subscribing to roles that don't actually work with you, right? Like, I know myself at times to be a contrarian, right? If you present an idea or a fact or a statistic to me, I'm going to be like, well, what about this perspective? What about this perspective, right? And that's me. I know that to be in myself. And I also think that's a very valuable role to play in my community so that my community doesn't become a bubble. I think every community needs an Imari, right? Who will come in and be like, oh, that kind of sounds like bullshit. Or what if we don't know everything, right? Like that ability to be, play that role in community comes from first knowing the self. Right? But if I first try to belong to a community, I'd be like, oh no, I can't play devil's advocate all the time. People are going to not like me and they're going to think I'm, a contrarian. They're not going to like, blah, 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 blah. If I'm worried about being accepted before I am concerned about who am I, then I'm going to compromise who I am in order to be accepted.
Mm. I also, this is in relationship to, and you are in relationship with the community. I think relationship is in, I have a relationship with water. I have a relationship with alcohol. I have a relationship with my home and also with other human beings and myself. And in that journey, like for me as a human being, I am an ever-changing, evolving creature. Who is Christina going to be today? And I think the job, the goal in community is to be able to then articulate that self to the other being. And there are times, yes, of insecurity that shows up because of fear of being rejected. And even in when that does arrive, and I think sometimes what gets in the trouble is trying to find the exact right words, like when you don't even have the right words to explain like what you're feeling or what you're thinking. And there's a lot of times that we actually talk to figure things out. Yes. I oftentimes get concerned with having a podcast because I may say something and someone locks me into a perspective or a viewpoint. And after we push, end on this or stop recording on this show, I might, I'm still growing. I might change my mind. And so it's the allowing our members, or the people around us that we're in relationship to continue to grow. Sidebar, a friend actually recently told me that she changes her phone number every 6 months. So that she can grow, that she's not attached to a specific identity.
I love that. That is so cool. Shout out to, I don't know her name, but shout out to her.
Huda.
Oh, Huda? Huda. I love Huda. Yeah, shout out to that. That's amazing. There was one thing I was going to say. Okay, cool. Boom. I always love conversations with you, Christina. They're always such good tangents. This idea of content creation, right? Like you with this podcast, right? You're saying like, hey, here is me at this moment in time. And you're essentially allowing yourself to be judged, right? Because somebody's going to listen to be like, oh my God, Christina, she believes that theory or that, whatever, right? Your bravery in creating content from the testament of where you are right now while being willing to be judged, but you simultaneously knowing, and I'm going to change and I'm going to grow. But it's so important to like, it's almost like creating content in a way is like chapter markers of where we're at in our life at certain points, right? And looking back, Christina, when she's 85 years old with her wonderful hunky grandpa of a husband, is going to look back at your content and be like, oh, wow, I grew that way in that time and I changed in that way at that time. And I'm scrolling through my Instagram and, oh, wow, I was wild when I was 40. Like, that's going to be super powerful for just you, right? And for you to witness your growth and your change and your identity shifting over time, right? Like, I think this conversation is like floating around the idea of cancel culture when people are like, oh, 25 years ago, he said that thing and now we just have to ruin his life. And it's just like, you are literally perpetuating the idea that people are not supposed to grow, right? Like, for me, people who participate in cancel culture are essentially telling the world, like, I don't grow. Because nobody else must grow, nobody else must change. It's like, all right, well, if you're participating in cancel culture, I'm kind of judging you. The fact that you don't recognize that humans are meant to change and to make a statement or to create something like a podcast and say, this is what I believe right now. Like, that's fucking brave. And to be constantly, taking people to the torch because they're willing to be brave enough to express a cool or interesting or different opinion is so counterintuitive and so backwards and literally is slowing down the pace of our evolution.
So, Imari, you recently declared that you were leaving Instagram. And it's interesting that this is following this topic because initially when I read that and saw that, I was like, oh, I wonder how long this will be for.
That's probably what everybody thought. Yeah.
And then I did see, I think you have a story up today. You have some stories up today. So how do you leave Instagram and put stories up? I think I've seen posts after you left Instagram.
Yeah, not as many. I used to post every day. I posted like once the last week and a half, 2 weeks. Yeah, I knew this conversation was going to come up. Okay, let's talk about it. So when I say I'm leaving Instagram, I understand that that's like a, oh my God moment, right? Especially for, deep friends who follow me and appreciate my content.
It makes everyone question, should I leave Instagram too?
Which I think is a very powerful question to be asking. First of all, I'm very glad that that would stimulate that conversation. And I think it's an interesting balance. It's an interesting balance between saying like, okay, here's this platform that at the moment has the most eyes, right? Like at the end, like think about this. Through Instagram, I make 90% of my money, right? Like 90% of my clients come through there, whether through the guild or one-on-one. They see me coaching on there. They see me talking, whatever. So like, first of all, that's big, right?
Is that smart?
Yeah, that's a secondary conversation. We'll get to that in a second. So acknowledging that it's a behemoth and that's where the most eyes are. And if you want to spread a message, you go to where the most eyes are in essence, right? And I think there's also a conversation of one, asking yourself, is this the right platform for my message, for the things that I want to say, right? Like I know you were telling me earlier that you read my newsletter, which I appreciated. And the thought pattern that I took you on in that newsletter, I can't do that in a fucking Instagram caption. Like it would be too long and people are like not interested in that. People are like scrolling too fast. And the things that I want to talk about, the things that we're talking about on this podcast, they take like intentional time to sit with and to build ideas and to follow trains of thoughts. And that's not conducive for a platform that's just like scroll, 2 seconds of attention span, right? So half of me is like, this platform does not fit my message or my approach. And half of me is like, but that's where everybody is. And you got to reach people where they're at. So what I've been landing on recently is changing the way that I approach Instagram. Before I would respond to every DM, before I would respond to every comment, before I was posting every single day. And I think the way I'm going to transition into that is actually only posting when I really feel inspired to do so. And sure, that might affect how people feel about getting regular Imari content or the algorithm, like whatever. Like
they might forget about you.
They might forget about me.
You're unforgettable.
Christina's so sweet. I think it's very real though. I know we're kind of like joking around, but like you can be forgotten, right? And especially after you've trained an audience to know that you're getting content every day, which is what I was doing, right? But at some point it comes down to like it's not about the content, it's about the impact that I want the content to make, right? And if the content I'm making is just like fly by night, everybody can just kind of like double click and not even like pay attention to the actual message, then it's like, then I'm just doing it for optics and numbers, And what I feel really blessed about is that like, I don't have a huge following. I have like 5,000 followers, something like that, but I have more of an engaged audience than like 90% of my friends who have like 100,000 followers, 500,000, because like I'm creating content from my fucking soul. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I care about my people. Like somebody this morning like sent me a message about just like how much I've like transformed their life, right? Like, so I care deeply about the impact that it makes, not necessarily the numbers. Does that make sense? And I think that if I continue to play, I noticed myself playing the game in a way where I was just concerned about the numbers. And I started getting into the insights and I was like, why is this post doing well and this post isn't doing well? And what if I change the thumbnail here? What if I change the caption here? And I'm just like, I'm losing myself. I'm losing myself to the game. And it's making me resentful. It's making me uninspired. It's making me distracted. My energy is moving towards that shit rather than like creating shit. And Christina, like I posted today about that newsletter that you read, and I wrote another one today in like 12 minutes because I was so fucking inspired. I just like I was about to get like carpal tunnel on my wrist because I was just so inspired to write fast, because I feel like, wow, I found a medium through which people can actually connect with my ideas in a way that they can sit with, rather than on Instagram where like, I get it. Like you're just reading it while you're taking your morning poop. You don't want to hear about like deep philosophy. You don't want to understand how to change your life when you're like, just trying to finish your constipated poop this morning. Like I just got to meet people where they're at. And that's my Instagram story.
I think too, is like, I've had to check myself often of what I'm using social media for. To even go a little bit deeper, I have this fantasy of in 2024 to live without a cell phone.
Oh,
and just I'll have my computer and I'll work from my computer, but I won't have a phone. And I joke that I just need to find the right relationship before that time. So I have my significant other has the phone that can always reach us. And so I'm not ever completely disconnected. And then you start to think of, people point out like, well, how are you going to get from point A to point B? Google Maps, like everything is inside of this device. It's been built in to keep us connected to it. And it's not necessarily that, it was designed to jail you into the phone. And it has done that. I think they say with, Facebook didn't necessarily initially create itself I believe it was a pure creation. And then it turned of you have metrics and numbers and revenue to meet and you become a business and we want to keep your attention. I still remember Netflix, the CEO founder of Netflix had said that their biggest competitor was sleep. And so I've checked myself at time, I was a child who I have probably from my teens, 25 photo albums, the disposable cameras and then digital cameras that I would take and I'd print my pictures and I'd do my photo albums and I take my photo albums to my friends and be like, oh, look at all of our memories. And so initially when Facebook came out and then Instagram came out, I took it as like, oh, this is my digital photo album. This is great. And then it turned into a business thing, which I also, I do think there's some importance to it because us as a community society, if we want to support small businesses, this is one way to do just to support each other. And then sometimes I find myself like scrolling through my phone. I'll be in a phone conversation and I'm scrolling through my phone. I'm just scrolling through Instagram as like this rabbit hole of habit. And then I've told myself, well, if you're just going to scroll through, and you're not liking your friends' stuff. I'm like, are these really your friends? You're not even liking them. So then I'm just liking shit of people's, but I'm not reading your deep message. I'm just like, I'm going to support Imari. Most of the time when I see your stuff, I don't read what you've wrote underneath of it.
I get it. I'm not offended. I understand.
And then the last thing on that rant about social media, I remember a few years ago, I see, the hardest thing is you see 8 friends with a birthday, 15, 22 friends have a birthday. And I was Googling, okay, is there an automatic generator that will wish people a happy birthday on their birthday? And I was Googling for this. And then I realized, what the fuck? Like, I'm going to fake wish people happy birthdays.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I stopped myself and I just made it of like, I'm not wishing anybody a happy birthday. And I now live a little bit in it because I know so many people and I love them all and their birthdays are important. I'm so grateful that you're alive. Yeah. And I know that other people will take care of your birthday and wish you a happy birthday.
Right. Well, you better wish me a happy birthday.
I will always wish you a happy birthday.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I man, a social media conversation. It's like you said, you love your people and you also have a large network. And if you committed to wishing everybody a happy, thoughtful birthday every time it was somebody's birthday, you would get nothing done.
Nothing.
And, Christina from 10,000 years ago when she was a cave woman, and she wanted to wish everybody a happy birthday, that's fine because your network is 20 people in the tribe. So, you got one birthday every couple of weeks and that's fine. Right. But now the technology has given us access to a life and a lifestyle that's not built for our minds. Our minds are not built to be able to stand this many connections, right? And sustain them in a healthy way. So yeah, at some point you have to decide, okay, this is unnatural. This is not how my brain is designed to work. So how can I renegotiate my relationship to social media in a way that, you don't have to become like a fucking Mormon Amish person, be like, I'm never touching anything electric powered again. Like, that's not what you have to do, but you just get to get creative with, okay, how can I design my relationship with this thing in a way that feels in integrity, and what feels like in integrity with me right now is I deleted the app off my phone. I only use it on desktop. right, for business stuff. My manager takes care of most of my content creation, scheduling, posting. So even some of the things that you've seen me post in the last week actually weren't even me posting. It's actually my manager posting that stuff. Because yeah, here's something. It's ironic being somebody who has so many ideas and so much content that you can and want to create. It's ironic being that person while knowing the platforms that exist aren't always going to support your content. They're not always going to benefit from your content, right? It's like feeling like you have so many stories that you want to tell, but books aren't invented yet. So you have to write them on the wall, or you have to like paint hieroglyphics, and it's like, but this is not the story. This is not the story I want to tell. So then you have to create something new. Yeah.
Have you thought about what this medium is for you? I mean, you would, being a podcast host, I could see you definitely having a podcast.
Yeah.
And to the Guild.
Yeah.
The Guild is essentially a private, I would say private because people are opting in, choosing in to be a part of a program that they are effectively benefiting from, valuing. There's a value there too.
Right.
Have you thought about what would be this perfect medium for you?
Yes, a lot. That's where the newsletter came out of. Because, the newsletter that came out today, I think that was like number 4 or number 3. So that's something very new. And it's something that I told myself, like, look, let me just try this thing out, because I know Instagram is not my medium, right? Or it's not the medium that I can best communicate what I want to communicate. And that's been great. Newsletter's been up a couple of weeks and we already have a couple hundred people on it. That feels really good. I'm also in talks to develop my own podcast with a very good friend of mine, who I don't know if I can release the information quite yet, but stay tuned with, social media in order to find out when that happens. But yeah, I'm actively exploring multiple things right now, like a newsletter, like a podcast. I have like a little, like you introduced me to the group texting thing, right? So I have like a subscriber list people I can text like cool thoughts throughout the day, right?
Can you sign me up for that?
Yeah, I would love to. I can definitely make that happen. Because I just value, like I said, I value the impact that we can have with our content. And I don't want to water down the impact because we're forcing it through a medium that isn't designed for this kind of content.
So I know you do have a Guild program coming up. And what I really appreciate as I'm hearing about this program is that you're calling them virtues, values, to have a dream life. We Deepen, I had in January of 2021, so just a few months ago, I had I feel like I had one of those download moments where guidance, the acronym for guidance of We Deepen's values came through for me. And those are up at wedeepen.com under values. And I think that these, when you hear these words or these terms are the way of being, I guess I'll call the way of being, or the way of navigating life. I actually think they're one of the greatest formations of connection. When people opt in and agree to a specific set of values or virtues or principles that they are going to live by, I think that's what America, we had tried with the Constitution, trying. And, it's whenever anybody, if I'm ever working with somebody or talking relationships with somebody and they're going through a challenging time, it's always like, well, go back to your values. Exactly. And oftentimes we don't take the time. I don't see that people necessarily fully take, it's not in school. In school, they don't have you like I don't remember going through that specific exercise, and then really just also reinstating those values consistently in your world and talking about them. Right. So I love to bring those up. You mentioned 7. If you just run through what the 7 are, and then we can talk about each of these values individually.
Yeah. Let's do it. So to give context and to set the container, this took many weeks to understand. I had a list of like 220 values in front of me, just sourced from all over the internet, sourced from asking my followers what they think are important values and virtues. And I boiled it down to 7. And it's the 7 virtues that I believe distinguish the people who are living life by default and people who are living life by design, right? So people who are like, I want my life to look a certain way, and I'm willing to commit to a certain 7 values in order to make it happen. And I think that, there's some people who just go by the book and they read the script and, they have varying levels of success with that, right? So these are the 7 virtues that I believe are the difference, right? First is self-awareness, right? We talked about that at the beginning of this podcast. I think it's massive. Like the people who know, okay, my name is Christina, here are my talents, and here are maybe my blocks and my fears. Without knowing that, how can you move forward? How can you design anything? Knowing what resources you have, knowing what characteristics and qualities you have, right? That's number 1, self-awareness. Number 2 would be purpose. Because you can have all the self-awareness in the world, but if you don't know how to direct it, then what's the point, right? So purpose is number 2. Third one is courage. What does it look like for you to be like, okay, I have my purpose. I know I need to take this step, and I know I'm shitting my pants right now, right? What does it look like to be shitting your pants and say, I'm going to do it anyway because my vision is worth it, because the cost that I would pay not living my life the way I want to is too high, right? So self-awareness, purpose, courage. Fourth one is commitment. So will you continue to show up for the things that you said you were going to show up for, right? Like if I say like, oh my God, I'm aware that I want to have a wife, right? And my purpose is to live a life with a beautiful wife, right? Okay, cool. It's going to take courage for me to go up to a beautiful Christina at a bar and be like, excuse me, can you be my friend? Right? Like that takes courage. And then cool, she says no. And then the next girl says no. I'm still going to be committed to doing it again next Friday and next Saturday. It's like, that's what it takes. Showing up over and over again, courageously. Yeah. The next one is experimentation. Experimentation, I think, is very important and undervalued. Is like, okay, if my purpose is to marry a beautiful wife, right? And I'm trying every weekend and I go to the bar and nobody's talking to me. It's like, maybe I try something different. Maybe I have a different pickup line. Maybe I wear a different outfit. I do something different because I'm willing to not be attached to how it happens, but I'm committed to what happens, right? I'm committed to getting a wife. I don't care how it happens. Maybe I meet her at the mosque. Maybe I meet her at the strip club. It doesn't matter. I'll experiment, right? So a recap so far. We have self-awareness. We have purpose. We have courage and commitment and experimentation. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Followed me so far? Next would be faith. Faith is like a trust in something outside of your own conscious mind that things will work out according to the vision that you've laid out, as long as you keep showing up, as long as you do your part, right? And I think that's the part that I've struggled myself with. I sometimes I rely too much on my own conscious mind to create the results in my life. Yeah. And then the last one is community, because you are not going to accomplish 100% of what you want by yourself. That's just a fact. It's just not going to happen. Like however successful you view Deepen to be right now, it would not be that did you not have a Zach or a Nina or whoever, like if you didn't have support, or if you didn't have your facilitators, it wouldn't happen. Right. So I think it's important, lastly, for us to accept we can't do shit by ourselves, become aware of who we have access to that can support us and hold us accountable and provide us with whatever resources, and then reach out and then build networks and build community. Like, I don't know, this podcast is like collaboration number 12 between Imari and Christina, right? Like, and I'm so grateful for every single thing that we do together, because it always then spawns off something else, and it continues to bring you closer to your dreams and brings me closer to my dreams. So like acknowledging that like I can have all the purpose and self-awareness and commitment, experimentation and courage and faith, but it also takes opening up and reaching out and trusting my community to hold me.
People need people.
People need people.
Can't do this alone. So let's dive into some of these more deeply.
Yeah, sure.
We started talking about self-awareness. From my own experience, one of the things of being founder of We Deepen and bringing all types of transformational social experiences into one platform is that I've gotten the opportunity to participate in them.
Yeah.
And in that participation, I've gained greater self-awareness. So through modalities like meditation, journaling activities, having difficult conversations creates greater self-awareness. All types of transformational workshops. Yes, we can go there. And that's an endless cycle. That's like, that doesn't end these self-awareness.
Because you're constantly changing, right? If you're constantly changing, then the discovery of the self will be a constantly moving target, right?
And even modalities too, like gene keys, human design, astrology, and not saying that you need to necessarily fully believe in them, like going into experimental. It's like you get to experiment with these techniques and tools and see how they fit you. They give you something to respond to that then creates more of a self-awareness, which is, and in self-awareness, then I get to discover my boundaries. Yeah. I get to know then how is my nervous system responding? And when I can know my nervous system, I know what
works, what doesn't work for you. Yeah.
What communities are right for me. I've thought after I once was in a relationship, which it felt, I dated a narcissist. I'll just be blunt. And coming out of it, it was like, I attuned to myself and I said, next time I find a partner that's good for my nervous system. And the same thing goes to community. Find a community that's good for your nervous system. So self-awareness, jumping into purpose. So purpose is an interesting one because I guess it's a dance with self-awareness and purpose. Yeah. And sometimes, if I rewound 7 years ago, I had a business card that said marketing executive, community leader, founder of Game Lace, an intimate apparel brand. I did commercial real estate. I was the founder of Birthday Tongue, a singing telegram company, founder of Feminine Weapon, Women's Empowerment, and also founder of Underground Unattached, a dating experience, and a relationship coach. It was those. I had that in one business card, because I was like, I'm going to put it all out there in one business card. And going through that journey of experimentation is where then I got to discover my purpose. Now, maybe my purpose was experimentation.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I think that's very real. But yeah, keep going. I'm loving this.
So how if somebody's like, I don't know where, and I'm only judgmental about this and I'm working through the word judgmental. I'm in when I'm gauging compatibility, romantic compatibility. I am very attuned to how I observe someone else is spending their attention. Where are you spending your attention? How's your energy being shared? If I'm friends with you, do whatever the fuck you want. But if I'm going to be romantic with you and actually be in a stable environment and build that, it's like, I want to know where you're injecting your energy. But if I'm 21, 17, different phases and spaces of life, maybe I've just retired. How is it that you discover purpose?
Very good question. So I want to preface this with an asterisk. So the guild, like we talked about with the 7 virtues, the classes that I'll be leading this fall, every other class, I bring on a guest speaker right? Like very high profile, high caliber, people in our network that are very specifically chosen for this reason to talk about things, right? Like Yadi's coming in to talk about courage, for example. And I have a really well-known coach, Derek Riddell. I think I said his name right, Derek Riddell. He's coming to talk about purpose. He wrote the book, The Law of Emergence. And he's coming in to talk about purpose from a somatic standpoint. Like, how does your body know when something's in alignment with you, right? And how do you choose from that space? So for the people who do sign up for the guild, they'll get a masterclass in purpose finding through Derek. But to answer your question, like, how does one find one's purpose? In my own opinion, I think that especially the longer you live, you start to see a through line. You start to see like a pattern. Like you, for example, you did unattached, the
underground unattached.
Underground unattached. I'm sorry. You were a relationship coach. You did you Deepen, for example, is like a relationship company. That's a through line. Christina is fascinated by the idea of connection and relationship. So whatever it looks like may be different. You might be throwing underground connection parties. You might be throwing sex parties. I don't know. But the through line is there. And I think that when you take a second to pause and you look with a magnifying glass at the things that have lit you up throughout your life, a lot of times you will see a pattern. And in that pattern, I believe you'll find essentially purpose. It's the thing that has been lighting you up since the beginning, and you've either chosen to ignore it or you've chosen to follow it, right? So for me, I'm pretty sure you know this, like I was a filmmaker, right, for 8 years or something like that. And when I started my first company as a filmmaker in South Carolina, broke as hell, didn't know what the hell I was doing, right? I had just one clear vision. I want to make videos that challenge the way that people think. I just don't want to make status quo videos. I don't want to make, mascara commercials. I want to make something that makes you be like, I've never thought of that. Or, I've never considered that. That's what I wanted, right? So I did that, and I made videos for, artists who, had cool ideas, or I did videos for nonprofits that were trying to change the way people approach things. Like, I did that. And then my career grew, and I came to California, and I started directing for Jubilee, right? That viral video company. And the videos that I made for them were all about social experiments, how to design experiments that challenge the way people approach each other in reality, shifting their perspectives. So right now as a coach, what do? I shift people's perspectives. As a facilitator, I shift people's perspectives. That's, I believe, my purpose is to make you consider things you have not yet considered. That's it. And if I do that, I feel good. Like I feel alive. I feel like Imari. Like I'm rocking, so I feel like if you're blessed enough to have followed your intuition for a while now, you can probably see a through line of what your passion is, what your purpose is. If you haven't, like many people who have ignored their calling and who have maybe like put to the side their instincts, I would just say, take a second, pause, make a list. What are the things that fucking light you up? Like, what are the things that you're like, ooh, like, I love talking about that. I love doing that. I love whatever it is, right? Make a list of those and see if there's a through line. And if there's no through line, maybe you need to experiment more. Maybe you need to go to some crazy ass parties and try some crazy ass shit until you find the thing you're like, oh my God, I love one-legged fire spinning in virtual reality. Like whatever it is, right? Like keep trying until you find the thing that you're like, why does this not exist? It needs to exist. And it will as a result of you.
In our current money system, like the way money is set up, does my purpose also need to correlate with how I make money?
Oh, Christina, such a good question. I feel like somebody just walked by his closet and heard me go, oh, Christina.
And I ask that because I Google some weird shit sometimes. Like I have a thought that comes through my head and I'll just Google it. And I'm thinking, there's a time, I remember I have a best friend growing up from high school, and she wanted to be a mother. That's really what she wanted to do when she grew up. She'd always say she wanted to be a mother.
Paid to be a mother.
Yeah, you're not going to get paid to be a mother. Right. And there are these things that people are passionate about and receive purpose through being a good friend. Mm-hmm. Like, I have a purpose to support my friends and to be a really good friend. Mm-hmm. How...
Man, I love that question. I love that question so much. Okay. So, growing up, I witnessed and seeing a bunch of people live 9 to 5 lives, and they were unhappy, as we all do, right? And as growing up, I created the belief that, if I can get paid doing what I love, being myself, then I am successful. And then I did that. And then I got paid, at first to be a filmmaker and do the thing. And I was still unhappy. And now I get paid to coach. And I get paid to speak. And I don't know yet if I yet feel successful. So I would say, do you have to get paid in order for it to be a purpose? I don't think so. I think money is an arbitrary thing that we created. And I think that purpose is something universal and timeless and fucking much juicier than, currency, right? I think it is a nice thing to get paid to fulfill your purpose. I think it's actually more important to me that people don't compromise on who they are, or they don't compromise on their purpose in order to get paid. Does that make sense? So, if your purpose is to be a mother and you fully believe that, but you're working a job that keeps you at work 15 hours a day and you never see your kids because it pays well, you're fucked. No, you're fucked. Stop. That's not going to work, right?
Imari, you're 28?
29 in 3 weeks.
Oh, 29 in 3 weeks. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I often hear from people who are generally, it will come from over 35, 40-year-olds will say right now specifically, we just had COVID. Actually, unemployment just ended for a lot of people. And there's a constant thing I hear. People don't want to work anymore. The younger generation doesn't want to work. Is it, and I could say, yes, it's, sometimes there's video games, there's porn, there's laziness, there's drugs, there's alcohol. Is there another perspective that maybe that is missing in the conversation around the younger generation doesn't want to work?
Me and you, Christina, and everybody who's listening to this, has lived through one of the most interesting fucking times in recent human history. Right?
Living through it.
Living, currently, yes. For some reason, I always talk about COVID like it's over. But whatever. It's a mindset. What was I saying? So, we've lived through this amazingly interesting time. The first time in human history where people on a large scale didn't have to work for a second. And everybody in that new perspective was like, wait, why the fuck were we with that? This is so much better. It not working put in perspective for so many people of okay, wait, it's not a necessity and it kind of sucks. Right? So I think for the first time, younger, kids, they're like, why go back? If it doesn't have to be, why do it? Right? And I think that I'm not qualified. I don't know anybody who's qualified yet to talk about what would a system look like that didn't require work. Right? I think most people, for the most part, are aware that the idea of working a set number of hours per week is outdated. It's not necessary. It doesn't make sense. There's no requirement to make that happen, right? So, what would a world look like where people don't work and yet society still functions and the economy still runs? I think we're not even close to that conversation yet. I plan to be alive when that conversation does happen. But for right now, I don't think we're close to that, because we're too attached to the idea of work equals worth as a person. I'm still caught up in that. So
I am, maybe you can support as I am navigating just a fronting, just a fronting piece of information about myself and how it relates to society. Okay. So we brought in attracted a senior level COO, phenomenal Matthew. He's, yes, high five, has jumped on board, and he's just operationally setting us up and building our portals for submissions for experiences and events. And he's built companies before, his legit background. It's phenomenal. And we are going through the financials of We Deepen, and I was looking back, from 2019 to mid 2020, we had a CFO, and we developed a very robust reporting, our financial documents, and our salaries. And my salary has me working up to, after we raise funding and as we grow, making $132,000. And he said, well, there's different ways of doing. Yes, if we go and get venture funding, then you take a little less. They want to see that you're putting, but they don't necessarily want you to be struggling. They want you to feel comfortable, but also have room to grow. And he said, or we can go the other way. And he's like, I'd like to see you making like $200,000 a year. And there's a thing inside of me that's like, I am so undriven by money. And because he asked the question, like, or is it that you like living a life where you're supported by community? And yes, if I was making $200,000 a year, it'd be more easy. I'd be able to more flow and be great. And I remember David Guillaume, my Kabbalah teacher, a decade ago, I was telling him, years ago, I don't care about being rich. And he said, well, Christina, that the more that you have, the more that you can give. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I want it all. And I feel that way about like resources. Like I love connecting people and having a network that, what do you need? What do you need? Well, let's create this. This is who we can work with. Yeah. And so I'm reconciling within myself this money piece, because it would make my life easier. And I'm seeing somebody, I'm in romantic context. And this morning, we were talking about, as we're, gauging compatibility between us, and we're talking about male and female polarities and roles within the relationship. I actually want to take that word role away of, I guess the way that we participate. And I had said, well, I like when a man pays. And because of that, for me, and I think this is where we get to in community, established, like, it's not to say that, and I have in my, 20s, it's so interesting. I didn't think this was going to be a topic, but, in my 20s, I had a 5-year relationship, and I enjoyed when he paid too. And we were young and we were growing, this is the prime age of 25 to 30. And there was times where I was making more money than him. And so in moments, but actually we'd go out and I would give him $100 cash and he would then pay. He would pay the whole night. We actually developed a shared banking account. And so he would, we would, pay out of that, but he would pay, but it would be our shared money. Yeah. And so I guess of just rewinding I think we're all driven by different necessities, because money isn't necessity. And we all get to acknowledge, and I will say is like, I also don't want to stop myself from receiving, like, yes, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, bring it on. And I realized that I don't, for the kind of one of the first times ever, I don't necessarily have a full trigger around, and maybe it's, I've been in the Palisades, I've been in this comfortable living state. I did, during COVID, because Deepen was an in-person event company, I was like primed for unemployment, which is just now ending. And I know that I need the money, but I'm just not declaring it. And so is that non-declaring of it going to hold me back?
Like not calling it in or not putting in the work, or
just when we're putting up the pro forma and putting our financial documents, I'm like, sure, okay, 200,000, but I'm not like, oh, I need that. So is it then? It becomes like, like this lackadaisical. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, doesn't. I'm not going to strive for it.
Right. Oh, very interesting question. Thank you for sharing all that. So I'm going to make some assumptions. I'm going to make the assumption that based on the money that you bring in from Deepen or your numerous ventures, that you can sustain a lifestyle that you enjoy, right? It's like there's people who work and they're like, I need to pay the rent. I need to get the food. It's a need situation, right? So they're like, no, I need $50,000 a year, right? And then you get into the, we'll call it like 80K to 150K, and you're like, oh, I got everything I need. I'm living, right? Like I'm chilling, and I'm out of this need thing, right? And some people never leave the need. They're like, no, I need more, give me more. Right? They're just like constantly striving, and they constantly feel like they don't have enough, right? And I think this place that me and you have hit, me especially recently, I'm just like, I'm really just not motivated by money, because I'm just like, I'm not checking my account every day anymore. I'm not worried if my bills are going to get paid anymore, right? So it almost feels like, yeah, if I bring in more right now, it's what am I going to do with it? It's just going to be excess, right? Until you confirm with yourself what I would do with the excess, right? When you're like, oh, well, if I'm making $500K a year, I'm going to be able to get this house, which is the house that I want. I'm going to be able to donate to this charity, and I'm going to be able to start this nonprofit. And you know exactly what the money is going to go to, and you realize you need that money in order to make it happen, then you'll transition to a space of like, no, I need this to happen, right? So I think when you are faced with this conversation of, well, where am I going to get the motivation for 200K from, right? What would you do with the 200K? Get clarity on that. And if you realize, oh, actually I only need 170K, then you'll adjust. Or you're like, oh, actually, no, I need 250K. And I think that, every once in a while, us checking in with ourselves is like, I don't think there's ever anything wrong with wanting more, right? Like, it's like, just do it consciously. Do it from a space of like, because like your mentor said, like you can do more with it. You can give more with it. But if you're just racking up numbers because numbers look better, and it's kind of boring, and it doesn't motivate you after a while.
Yeah. And I'll say this, just as we spoke in the earlier part of this podcast, is that, or I like to say, we always have a right to change our mind at any time, which then can lead us into commitment in a moment. And I do it's like so right now I'm feeling comfortable. And I am not paying rent. In the month of October, I will be living in an RV with my father, traveling the States as he retires. And I remind him that you are retiring. I am not retiring. And during that context, because I will be cared for by my father, and I'm blessed to have that experience right now. And I think there's a little bit inside of me there's a tiredness.
Same. Fucking same.
And so I think the tiredness is what is like resisting from the 200K, because
your mind believes that, oh no, I'm going to have to put in the proportional amount of work and effort in order to get to that next level as well. And right now your mind is like, but I'm good. I'm comfortable. Why? Like, why put in the extra effort? And I think that's something that, oh my God, it was like the biggest lesson of my like last year and a half is like, I hit a certain stage in my life as far as like, building a life for myself that worked financially, energetically, whatever. And I started wrestling with motivation. Something I never had to deal with before, right?
That's what I've been wrestling is with motivation.
Yeah.
Thank you for identifying what you're working through this.
Yeah, it's like I reached the point of comfort, and I was like, I can make another 100K. I can become a millionaire. I can do it, but like the work, like, but why? Right? Because the actual why before was so that I can pay my rent, so that I can breathe and I can live, right? Now that I'm doing those things, my mind is like, it knows what it did in order to get here, and it doesn't want to do more than that, you know? So I think that now my new conversation that I'm navigating is, how can I create more for myself? From a place of, because I want to do new stuff with this money, this new stuff with these new resources, but create it from a place of my energy doesn't feel like what it took to get here. How can I change the way that I work, right? How can I just make smarter deals, make smarter plays? I mean, it's corny, but work smarter, not harder, because I can work hard and get 500K, but then I'm working hard just to have $400,000 in excess. I don't need that. I'm not interested in that. Because now I think me and you are in a place where our energy is important to us, right?
And I think too, if I deeply acknowledge it, number one, I think it's sometimes when those conversations come up, what I can say is that I realize in this moment in time, that's not what I'm driven by, but actually at the end of October, beginning of November, that will all switch to me, and I'll start getting stressed out because I'm ready to leave Maryland. I want to move to LA. LA is it's going to take money.
You're going to find your like drive and your hustle mentality is going to kick back on, because it's you're talking about human biology and physiology right now, right? So it's what would it be like to give ourselves a why that doesn't stress us out, right? A lot of people's why for work is because I need to pay the rent. I need to get these bills paid. I need to provide for my kids. That why is very anxiety producing. I would like to find a why that is not anxiety producing. I want to find a why that feels expansive and inspired, because it's like, oh, wow, because if I do this, if I do put in that work for that one conference or that one workshop, oh my God, I could turn that into an event with Christina and we'll be able to have the seed money to make this new festival. Like, that's a more, I think that's the next why. That's the next motivation. Yeah.
And to acknowledge, entrepreneurship is fucking hard at times. And that's the thing that gets tired. And it's hard to take breaks at times, because like it's, you gotta keep going. And so there's a complete dance with it. Oh, this is the other thing that I also wanted to notch. I'm so glad I gave myself that pause. I think sometimes I've learned from not taking that pause, and I don't allow for the moment to come back, but allowing yourself to actually just pause and sit with the silence for a moment until it returns. I also just, I think also my biology is also setting in as I'm curious about being a human and being a female, and having craved being a mother. And I think
still crave that?
I am in a dance with it right now. I do want it, and I think more than wanting the children, it's acknowledging that I'd want the relationship. I want the partnership. Like if I took on, I'm only going to talk about this human being because I just left an experience with him, but this particular human being has 2 children. And I don't know. I haven't had the conversation with him if he wants more children or not. And I just, in that just reflection and looking at the scenario and not even inviting, seeking the answer just yet to that, which is important. It's an important question to ask. I just haven't gotten there. Yeah. And realizing, I'd realized in that connection that, like, actually, I crave more of the romance and the partnership and to creating a life together first and foremost. And if children, because there's so often too, I have many friends and women who've struggled through fertility issues, IVF treatments, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, lots and lots of stress, and I'm not open to that. So if it was to come naturally, and if the other person's in flow with it, but number one, it's and oftentimes too, people have asked me, would you do it alone? Just have the child.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
And my answer is no.
So then your priority is relationship, right? Like if I asked you and I said, like, okay, what if you could have the kids, but no partner? And I can see your head is automatically like a no, right? Versus like, what if I told you could have the partner, but no kids? And you're like, I'm watching you. Your physical body response is like, I'm open to that, right? So your priority is that, and you can have both, right? I'm not saying it's either or,
totally.
But it's like those kind of questions help you to understand your priorities, right?
And I've had, throughout this of my 30s, I've known that, I could just accept any relationship right now and have children. Mm-hmm. I had one male friend of mine who for years would be like, I told you, like, as I was, house swapping to, being the girl that lived on people's couches in second bedrooms and building my company out of their garage, but really in their guest bedroom, at their kitchen table. Also, he was like, why don't you just get a boyfriend? like this solves everything for you. It gets it all done, yeah. And it's not, it is. Thank you for realizing it is the relationship piece. So I will say in that, reconciling within me of being a female, there is, or a motherly, somebody who is, kind of a nurturing mother. I consider those characteristics of me. There's a moment of like, that biologically has not happened for me. So I haven't had this shift that I thought I would. And so my energetics are like, do I keep, like, I wasn't expecting to keep pushing and pushing and pushing a company forward. And that is, that is being resolved in this moment, right now, right here.
Here we go. Here we are.
Here we go.
Yeah, it's the important word is the motivation, right? It's when you feel like your energy is getting weird, right? Like we talk about, like we're like, hard work doesn't sound interesting anymore, right? It's like when energy gets weird, it's a simple question: what's your motivation? What are you actually in it for, right? When I talked you through the relating the other day with messaging the guy on Facebook, you were alive. You were like, well, what do I do this? Or what do I do? And like your energy was there, right? Because Christina is motivated by relationship, right? So that's where she's going to find the energy. That's where she's going to find the go, right? Probably when, somebody messaged you about Deepen and they're like, oh my God, I went to a Deepen event and like, I found the love of my life and I felt so connected and I felt relationships and oh my God, it was so great. That fires you up more than like your investors being like, hey, we'll give you an extra $50,000. You know what I mean? Because it's motivation. That's the question, right? So like, if you want to change your energy, if you're a leader on a team or you want to change the energy of the people on your team, figure out what people are motivated by, right? That's the ticket. That's the key. That's everything.
two of these, let's do a time check. Oh, we're at an hour and 9 minutes. So this is becoming a longer podcast, but I want to wrap or get to a couple more of these before we wrap this up. Yeah. Commitment. Commitment's an interesting one because we all reserve the right to change our mind at any time. 100%. Correct. And I
love your devil's advocate. It's so good. Yeah, keep going. Going.
And I think sometimes, if you, maybe this is why you've wrapped this one in the other virtues, because I think the other virtues are super important to this. Self-awareness is super important to making commitments. How do we know that we're making the right commitments?
What's more important to you than discomfort? That's it. Right? So remember the example I gave you, I don't know, like 45 minutes ago when I said the guy who goes to the bar, he's like, I want to find a wife. Right? In that moment, when he says, I am going to find a wife, I don't care how awkward, how dorky, how ugly I am, or how many times I slip up, I'm finding a wife. Then yeah, in that moment, the commitment, the vision of having a wife is more important to him than, am I going to say something stupid to this girl or she's going to throw a drink in my face, right? He's willing to experience that discomfort because his commitment is strong, right? And I think that there are some things that are like not worth committing to, right? Like, in my personal opinion, right? So like, if you, not that you would ever do this, but if you invited me to a shitty party and I really didn't want to go, and there was going to be people there I didn't like, and they were going to do things I don't want to do, and I said, okay, I'll go. I'm committed to going. It's like the discomfort that I'm experiencing is so much higher than the motivation that I get or the energy that I get from actually going, right? But what if I was like, oh my God, Christina tells me there's going to be beautiful women there and everybody's going to be talking about philosophy and the food's going to be great and I'm going to get a massage and I'm like, wow, this is going to be the most transformative party of my life. But, oh, I'm going to have to sit in traffic. Oh, I'm going to have to get dressed. It's like, now I'm committed to going because the end result is bigger to me than the discomfort that I will experience. Right? So I think that a lot of people don't have things in their life that are worth being uncomfortable for.
Commitment is definitely it's relationship, and whether it's a commitment to yourself of something that you're saying you're going to do, and yes, you can renegotiate your commitments with yourself all the time, and that's kind of even going through the uncomfortableness of admitting that, hey, this actually wasn't the right one for me, so let me find what is the right commitment. Now the relationship play too, so that's a commitment to self. When we make commitment to other people, this is where communication is also super important, because everything right now, it's up for interpretation. So I could say something in one way and you think that my commitment was another way. They say it in, let's go back to the example of children. Mm-hmm. So a couple comes together, they have decided, they have the conversation, both of them say they want children. Great. So they both say they want children, they get married, they go to start attempting to have children and they can't get pregnant. Maybe they go through some treatments and then the woman says, or the man says, whoever may be, that let's adopt. And the other one says, I don't want to adopt. And they say, well, you said you wanted children. Well, I didn't say that I wanted to adopt children. I said I wanted biological children.
Clarity of the commitment.
Clarity of the commitment.
Right. Saying like, are we committed to having kids through you? You're having the kids? Or are we committed to raising children? Different kind of conversation, right? And, when people jump in with me, whether through the guild program or through one-on-one, we spend like the first 2 weeks getting really clear on what you're committed to, right? Because during the course of the program, I'm going to hold you to it. I'm not going to let you give up on your commitments. So let's take the time to make sure we're really clear on what it is that we want, right? I think that's a really big underrated question just in general society. It's like, what do people want? What do you want? And I'm talking about get disgustingly specific with your details. Like with the example you just talked about with like people having kids. I want 2 kids through my vagina and and they're going to be born through this person and I want them to be raised in this way. Like get specific rather than like, oh, I want kids. It's like, there's a lot of ways you can have kids, but which way are you committed to? Right. So I love that. Clarity of commitment. Very important.
And I think there's also times that in people's lives that you know, although you said these are the 7 virtues to a dream-filled life.
7 virtues to create a life by design rather than default.
So in that context, yes, commitment is important.
Yes.
And there can be process to go through, that experimental process to even see what it is that you want to make a commitment.
Which is why the next thing is experimentation, right? But I think that, you know, we start to play a dangerous game when we just say like, oh, but what about when I want to change here? What about when I want to change here, right? Like that's why you need a coach, because I think it's very easy to think yourself out of commitment. And it's very easy to be like, oh, well, you know, I just decided to change my mind. Some people, they didn't change their mind. They're just uncomfortable. And they've never been uncomfortable before, right? Let's use a very easy example, right? I'm at the gym, and I say, in 3 months, I'm going to be able to pick up that 100-pound weight. And I work every day, and I make it happen, and it comes to the day where I'm supposed to pick it up, right? I pick it up, and I'm fucking straining, and I'm like, oh, I'm almost there. I can be like, what if I didn't really want to pick it up in the first place? And I just drop it, right? It's because you're uncomfortable. It's because it hurts. It's because you've never done it before. That's why you have a coach. Because a coach, a fitness trainer, is right there next to you and being like, no, you're going to pick it up. You're going to pick it up. No, I know you're trying to convince yourself that you've never even wanted to lift the weight in the first place. I'm telling you that you do. I'm telling you, I know you, and you're just scared right now. You just don't believe in yourself right now. And I think that's why it's a very delicate conversation, this idea of, yeah, my commitment can change, but at what point should I let it change? Because not every time you want to change your commitment is when you should change it, because then you're not committed.
I think you speak to a really important point of having accountability and a coach with you, because you can see that, hey, you know what? Maybe that wasn't the right commitment for you. Mm-hmm. You also brought something up around time. You said in 3 months. Mm-hmm. I think it's also really important that when you're making commitments, you wrap time frames around them, because podcast, Your Love Accomplice, it's in the same feed. If we go back to 2018, I did that podcast for a year. And at the time, it was that I'm going to put a podcast out every week for the rest of my life. And then a year into it, I was drained. I was like, I need to step back from this. And I withdrew. And if I thought of it more of a time frame, like I'm going to do a season, and this season is going to be, it's sort of like when we did Yes And, right. We did Yes And we said, we're going to do, let's try this for X number of episodes, see where this leads us. And so that's even part of, I think, when you're thinking of your commitments of wrapping time frames around them.
Super important, because time is essentially an accountability tool, right? That's it. If Christina says, Imari, I'm going to be able to lift 25 pounds. Okay, great. When? You can be like, oh, when I'm 100. You're like, I'm going to be able to lift 100 pounds by November. I'm like, okay, cool. Great. That means that this week you have to lift this much. This week you have to do this much. You have to run this much. You have to eat this much protein. Like now all of a sudden we can create a plan because there's time involved. But a lot of people are like, I'm going to be a famous artist. I'm going to build a business. But don't set any time container on it. So then it just keeps going by, and now you have no accountability.
So we're going to jump into community, and which are our last virtue here. And also to it in that, I'm spending a lot of time with my mom and my bonus father and my dad right now. And sometimes I watch them eat unhealthy. For the most part, their diets are not that great. And they, when I bring it up, they're like, we're going to die of something, it's something. It's kind of like when I say, like, don't use the microwave, or don't put the plastic in the, warm the plastic up. I'm pointing these things out that are potentially not good for their health. And it's like, I'm going to die anyway. I think that we as humans can also take that commitment, like, what is your commitment to life, and put a time frame around it. Like, I want to live, like, except you're going to die. Maybe that's another question. Would you want to live for forever? A future yes and whenever we bring that back. But what is your goal? I just had a friend live to 101. Ilona Royce Smithkin recently passed away at 101. So that's kind of become my gauge, is 100. I'd love to live to 100. And so if that's my gauge, then I have to eat healthy to sustain that. So I think
vision determines your actions, right? If you're like, I don't care when I die, I'm just going to die whenever. And it's like, yeah, sure, then go eat the fucking cheeseburger, right? Like, because then it doesn't matter. But if you have a clear vision, if you have a clear direction, then you will make decisions that are supportive of that vision. Yeah.
Community. And we said accountability too. So accountability is community. Yeah. You're creating that together. And we can't achieve all of these dreams alone. We do have to work together. And sometimes, a lot of times, I want to run to a private island and just take the people and pick the people with me. And we instead live on this planet that we all share, and we're all in some sorts of community society together. However, I guess I'll take that as society, humanity. Humanity is all of us. And then community is these separate groups. Have you heard of the Dunbar number?
Like how many people you can be in relationship with? Yeah.
150 people is what he says on average the brain can handle. How is it, when you speak community, is it that as Imari, are you aiming to build community, or are you aiming to be a part of a community? And how does how many communities can you be a part of? And what I often see as being, creating We Deepen is essentially each of the experiences that are part of the network are essentially all their own individual communities, and we're bringing them together. And what I oftentimes want to invite other leaders, and I actually just had a phone call with one of the members of our community, asked for personal feedback on his life. It was beautiful. And I had that. He had 12 questions about how he could be, for me to give him feedback. And one of those was, I had said, here we have this community, come and lead, your leader, lead with inside of this community. I wonder though, as a leader, is it that you're essentially aiming to build your own community? Are you wanting to join communities? And how many communities can you be a part of?
It's a lot of questions. I know that a lot of the actual motivation behind what I do is because I want to belong. I want connection. When I host an event for We Deepen, for example, like the contact improv thing I did a couple of Valentine's Day ago, I'm like, I just want to be around other people who think this is really cool. And because of, my speaking ability or my eloquence, whatever you want to call it, like I happen to be the leader, quote unquote. But I just want to be part of the community, right? So I found myself often being the person who creates the community. But because I have a secret mission of just wanting to be a part of the community, like this whole thing we've been talking about with these 7 virtues, like that's one of the classes in the guild. right? The Guild is my group coaching program that people sign up for. For me, I created the Guild because I just wanted to be around other people who thought self-development is cool, right? Like, yeah, I'll change your life and I'll help you create all your dreams and your goals because I'm good at that and I have an ability. But now that we did that, let's just be friends, right? Like, now let's just be brought together through the common thread of self-exploration, because not everybody is interested in that. So let's find the people who are, and let's stay connected. Let's build. Let's create together. So yes, I happen to be somebody who builds community, and it's only because I see a lack of communities out there that I enjoy being a part of.
Thank you. Thank you for this wonder. This is a good podcast, Brian Howie.
Great one. This is a 10 out of 10.
Brian Howie, he had said on this episode number 2, he said, just make a good podcast. All you do is make a good podcast. And I did, from an insecurity of there's some of the last released podcasts is the audio is so off, but the conversation was so good.
All good.
And this one feels perfect.
Yeah. I mean, Christina, I don't know if you're paying attention, but pretty much every time we collaborate, we make some really cool shit. So I noticed that pattern a long time ago. I think we're just continuing it with this. This is the first time I've been interviewed in a couple months.
We're not being interviewed. You're having a conversation.
Oh, yeah, fine. It's my first guest appearance on for a while with all the pandemic stuff happening. So happy to be back in this seat and having good conversations with good people. I miss it. This is one of my favorite things to do. So
you're one of my favorite people to have deep conversations with and good conversations with. Yeah.
Right back at you. We could do this all day.
Yeah. Even too is when I've had challenges in work environments, you were one in the past, and I was like, Imari can, what's the word I'm looking for? Mediate. Imari can mediate this because you have a very strong ability to stay neutral and to seek truth. So thank you for that. So the Guild, this is a program that you do how many times a year?
It only happens 3 times a year. This is the upcoming in October will be the last time it happens until July 2022. So if that idea of those 7 virtues, if it sounds like you could use those in your life, the self-awareness, the purpose, the commitment, the courage, the experimentation, the faith, and the community, if you're interested in developing those and hearing from top-notch experts from around the world help you to develop those, jump on it. Now's the time. I'm officially opening registration for that on my birthday, October 8th. So October 8th through the 15th is when you can register. But if you know that you're in, if you're committed, send me a message and you can get an early bird discount whenever this podcast drops. But the class officially starts October 18th. And yeah, if you want to change your life.
And if you're listening to this podcast after October 18th, you have July 2022 is the next program. So put that on your calendar now, as well as go to what website?
Tuakli.com. So that's IMARITUAKLI.com. That's my website where you can find all of the things from one-on-one coaching applications to group coaching kind of things. All that stuff you can find there.
You can sign up for the newsletter and also the text messages there as well.
Yes, you can. If you're a part of the community who loves to go deep, who loves to explore, who loves to deepen, if you will, let's connect, because there's no point in us doing this thing alone,
And come hang out with us at wedeepen.com. See experiences. Imari's hanging out at times. He's leading. We have a WhatsApp group for the community to gather. If you would like to join us in that, send me a message to us. Send you a private link for that. And thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for joining the journey. Thank you, Imari, for being a guide of Yes and for Valentine's Day, and for we didn't get to talk about your love life, just this podcast that we're going to come back in the future and we'll talk about Imari's love life.
Yeah, it's quite a journey, but yeah.
And subscribe if you like this. Subscribe to this podcast. Follow if you're on Spotify. Leave a review. It's helpful. Other people will find it too. It's on Spotify, iHeart, Amazon, Audible, all the networks. And what else do I want to leave you with? Yeah.
So I know that everybody says at the end of their podcast, like, oh, like and subscribe and follow, and everybody kind of just ignores it. If you're listening to this, I can personally vouch for Christina's commitment to challenging conversations and to creating connection. And if you're at the end of this podcast, you obviously care too. So it doesn't take any effort. Go ahead and subscribe and become part of the community, because Christina is busting her ass to create community for me, you, and everybody like us. Yeah.
And I'll take that recording and I'll add it to all the end of every single one of my episodes.
You can. You have my full permission.
Thank you all for tuning in. I love you. Until next time, visit wedeepen.com. Go to Instagram. We're still on Instagram. We go in and out of it. And follow, join the text message list as well. And I love you all. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Thank you.